this is one reason why I do think that is important for developers to own the tool chain and own how the tool chain drives any form of measurement. Because if you understand the why behind the instrumentation, that's a powerful thing to understand so that you don't overgame it and then just send somebody to the parking lot to wait for their food for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Steve McGhee. I'm a reliability advocate at Google Cloud. I was an SRE for a long time, and now I help people build more reliable systems on the cloud.
Hi, I'm Kyle Campbell, founder of CTO.ai. We are a modern development platform that helps companies measure the software developer experience. Been an entrepreneur and a self-taught software engineer for a long time, and love to help developers build internal developer platforms.
So when you think about, we talked about those 4 metrics, this is how you can measure if the software is getting out the door and if it's sticking. The only way we can measure this is through self-reporting, because this is, at the end of the day, this report is really just a survey-driven report. As a company, you can do the same thing internally. You can do this. You can ask people about, what do you think the numbers are? How often did you do this? You can survey your teams, but even better is if you can measure it directly. So there's a lot of ways you can do this with your CI/CD tool chain and with your incident response system, things like that. You can gather those metrics. However, those metrics aren't really meant to be you shouldn't have a leaderboard, right? We're not looking for who has the best number. It's all about the relative number, right? So you're using this as your health metric in terms of think of it as your height or your body weight or your pulse ox number or something like that. The goal is not to have the highest pulse ox number. You just want to make sure it doesn't get worse as you change your diet, right? You want to use it as an indicator to determine if what you're doing is making things better or making things worse. And really the goal is to think about what are those things that you're doing. Is it the diet that we're changing, or is it the activity, or did I change my job or something like that? What are the things that I'm doing? We call these capabilities. What is it that I'm doing that is causing the number to go up or to go down? And it's those 4 numbers, really, whether you measure them automatically or through surveys. We just say that those are just the indicators on if it's heading in the right direction or not.
There's a quote that I think comes from Amazon, possibly, that I love to think about, because over the last 10 years, I've tried to really understand what is the pathway to measuring the developer experience. I don't believe in measuring developer productivity. I believe in measuring the developer experience, just like I want to measure the user experience. You talked about user centricity. I think of developers as the user of the internal developer platform, the process, this enablement practice that a company has. And there's this quote that I always come back to, when the data and the anecdotes disagree, trust the anecdotes, right? And what is really great about surveys is you're going to get that anecdotal information directly from the source, and you should trust that, right? Especially if the data disagrees, or the data is not empirically accurate, or you don't have data that can actually help you understand the journey that people are on. And I always think about it as sort of these 2 pieces of information that are important, and you want to try to get data that can help you make these decisions, whether it's from an agile project management process, instrumenting CI/CD tools. And in the absence of that information, right, the best source of information, like you said, is to go to these surveys. But having both, I think, gives you really great context, because you're absolutely going to run into problems if you instrument your tool chain or instrument your platform for data where you just have a lot of data that doesn't tell you very much about what's actually the problem. When I've seen countless companies get to the ability to have data like this using our platform, and they're still left the question of well, what do I do with this now? And there is no magic bullet when you think about measuring DORA metrics. Even once you have some form of measurement, you still have to come back to the teams and look very clearly at what is the experience they're having, ask them about that. And I think it's important that people look at that from both sides, because as you kind of correctly pointed out, Steve, this idea of a leaderboard, this idea of developer productivity, it's the wrong question to ask, right? The question is, what's the experience that our developers have as they go from code to cloud? How can we, work with them to understand the friction that they're feeling, and then try to remove as much of that friction and measure the continuous removal of that friction through the value stream? And I think if we think about this in a user-centric way, the way you kind of mentioned, as if it were an end user using our product. There's a lot of existing ways that we do this that don't lead back to this question of, subjective productivity metrics. This
Right.
is just not what we're trying to accomplish. It doesn't aid in building a safe place, a good culture. And we know that teams do the best when they're in a safe culture that enables them to do and focus on their best work.
Yeah, it's something that I kind of struggle with the four key metrics, because it seems when people talk about DORA, they say, oh, the four metrics, and I kind of go, yeah, I mean, yes, they are there, but like it's almost literally the least important part of DORA in my head. Like it's just the easiest thing to grok. And so like we have to remember Goodhart's law, or like the idea of like, if you tell me how you measure me, you're gonna know how I'm going to act, right? Like I'm going to act in the way that the measurement dictates, or I'm going to, if you tell me to, here's this measurement that I'm going to judge you based on, like I'm going to game it like pretty much every time. So it's really kind of unfortunate that, in my opinion, that DORA is best known for these four metrics, because it's like it quickly leads to like, oh, how can we game this, right? Like how can we make ourselves look good, when in reality what we really do, so like as a DORA team, we provide this report, but like the rest of the year we're actually going out and we're meeting with customers and we're helping them interpret their kind of DORA statistics and stuff. And the metrics that we start with, those four numbers, they're only a starting point. They're just so we can get like a really coarse idea of where to begin. And then we do just what you're saying, is we just start asking them questions, right? And like the thing that is a problem immediately comes to the surface. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, that thing is so hard. Like that's totally the worst. And like it's like, well, great. Like let's fix that one. Right? Like let's see what's holding us back. If we all agree this one thing is holding us back, and our numbers are, not great in whatever we think great means, let's work on that thing and see if they get better. So that's kind of the double-edged sword of these metrics, is that they're really easy to understand, but there's this whole other side of the equation, which is those capabilities that drive those metrics. And then what they both together actually result in is the outcomes. And the outcomes tend to be business outcomes, like are we being successful as a company, and individual outcomes, which is like, are we all happy as employees here? And are we, is the culture doing well, and things like that. So those are the really important bits, and everyone focuses on the middle part, which is kind of a bummer, but we're working on it.
An abstract example of where I've experienced this as a end user, McDonald's drive-through, pull through. I'm the only person in line. It's 11 o'clock at night. I order a Big Mac and a Coke. And they ask me, can you please go wait in the parking lot and we'll bring it out to you? I look behind me. Nobody's even behind me. Why? Well, we're measured by the time and we don't, right? So when we create these measurements, clearly this is just a very abstract example, but you can overlay this on the value stream of any business. We're going to have people behave in certain ways. And I think it's important that they understand how we think about good and what measurements drive that. So this is one reason why I do think that is important for developers to own the tool chain and own how the tool chain drives any form of measurement. Because if you understand the why behind the instrumentation, that's a powerful thing to understand, so that you don't overgame it and then just send somebody to the parking lot to wait for their food for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah. I think there's room here for people to become experts in doing this job. And it can be the Scrum Master, it can be the product manager. I don't know who it can be in your company, but like this is like a position for someone to kind of step in and say like, sure, we have these numbers, but let's take a minute to like analyze what it is that we're doing here. And that can kind of be anybody. Like it could be like the junior person on your team who's like, how does stuff actually work here? But it does take someone to kind of say like, let's have that extra layer of discussion to figure out what it is that we're doing here and what's holding us back. Just looking at the numbers isn't sufficient. Like not even looking at the numbers is also bad. Like not measuring yourself at all is not the answer either, right? But you gotta follow the measurement with an analysis step. And a lot of people kind of just skip that. They're like, we measured, it's great. We're all average height, like, well, that doesn't tell us anything about our health, right? So you gotta do that analysis step as well. If you want to learn more about DORA, check out dora.dev. And you can join our community as well. There's a URL, dora.community, which is an actual URL. You can type it into your browser. And where we meet up a couple times a month to talk about DORA and how they're adopted within communities and organizations. And then keep a lookout for Ask Dora. I call it Dora Bot, but we have an LLM that's trained on all of the DORA material for the past 10 years. And you can ask it any question you'd like to better understand all the material within the DORA reports over the years. And don't forget to check out the Accelerate book as well. It's 10 years old and it still rings true.
If you're looking to advance your CI/CD practices and get DORA metrics automatically through that tool, check out CTO.ai. We will help you set up your CI/CD process to automatically collect and search and report on the DORA metrics that come out of your CI/CD practices. And then you can use those and compare them with the word of your team to understand how to continuously improve over time. I want to say a big thank you to Steve from DORA for joining us, and we'll see you soon.